everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Globe Interview Series. I'm your host, Sunlight, and today I'm so excited to welcome onto the show Samson Mow, CEO at Pixelmatic and Jan 3, and also Chris Wood, COO and right-hand man at Pixelmatic. So watch on to find out everything they're building with Infinite Fleet. Now, onto the interview. The Globe mobile app is now live on the Apple App Store. Trade anytime, anywhere, with any asset as collateral. Stay connected with all your positions on the go. Globe, exchange everything, now even easier. So, welcome to the show, Samson and Chris. How are you guys?
Good, thanks.
Very well, thank you.
Good to hear it. So, let's actually ask both of you. So, Sam and Chris, can you tell us about your backgrounds and how you got into the crypto sphere?
Sure. So I guess my background is game development originally, but a friend of mine was running an exchange back in the day, BTC China, and I first joined as an advisor and then became the COO there. And I was running Pixelmatic all along that time. So I guess that was my original start in the industry, in the Bitcoin industry. And after I left BTC China, I joined Blockstream, and then I was there for about 5 years. So Blockstream is a Bitcoin infrastructure company focused on Bitcoin protocol and layer 2 development. And then I started up Jan 3 last year. And Jan 3's mission is to accelerate hyper-Bitcoinization and get more adoption of Bitcoin around the world.
Awesome.
Sorry, and I'm Chris, obviously, so I'm the COO, so I'm kind of the second in command and Samson's helper, because obviously Samson is a very, very busy man indeed, and it's kind of my job to make sure his vision is coming to light. My background is that I'm a massive gamer. I've loved games my entire life, and previously I was working in operations in an edutech company. But then after meeting Samson, he kind of laid out his vision for Infinite Fleet and what we'll be doing with it. And I got super excited and jumped ship right away to work with him in Pixelmatic.
Welcome to the dark side.
Yes, well, that and Bitcoin as well. There's been a few influences from Samson.
Right, Samson. So you've actually got so much experience in gaming as a whole. So you were an executive producer at Ubisoft, so one of the largest gaming companies in the world. What was it about blockchain that enticed you to move from such a well-known company to start your own venture in blockchain?
Well, I thought it was about time to start my own studio. So that was the reason why I left Ubisoft to bootstrap Pixelmatic. I wanted to be able to make my own games and create my own vision and bring something new to life. I thought there is a problem with the traditional game industry, which is they're very adverse to experimentation and doing new things. So usually most big games from big game companies and big game publishers are just simply rehashes of the same franchise. They just take the IP once they have the IP and they iterate and create, blank blank 2 and blank 3 and blank 4, but they're almost the same thing, just with a different story, upgraded graphics. And that wasn't very interesting for me. I wanted to create a new experience and specifically focus on the sci-fi MMO genre. So that was why we created Infinite Fleet, and we spent a long time prototyping and figuring out exactly what this game would look like. I guess the other part is like, how does it relate to the blockchain technology part, and that is using the Liquid sidechain, which is again from Blockstream, launched by Blockstream. So what we're doing with Infinite Fleet is we're trying to integrate this tech into the game. The game itself doesn't require any blockchain. It's not built on a blockchain, but we do use some technology from the Liquid network. So we issue NFTs for the game in Liquid, and also the game currency is originally minted on the Liquid chain as well. So Chris, maybe you can dive into some of the mechanics of how that works.
Yeah, happy to. So for us, what we have is what we call the INF token, which is a token which you receive by playing the game. Okay, So in Infinite Fleet, you take part in events, raids, and all these kind of things. And if you're the sort of top of the leaderboard, if you contribute well to these events, then you receive the INF token for free. It's not something that we're selling. We're not even monetizing it at all, actually. It's totally free for players to earn. And with that, they can use it on a peer-to-peer exchange to trade our NFT spaceships, planets, space stations, commanders, all this kind of thing, using what's called the atomic swap, which Liquid facilitates. So with the atomic swap, what makes it really great is that we can have totally trustless transactions. So when both parties are making the transaction, they both load up the asset and it transacts or completely fails. So that means you've got complete trustless trade. So you can use our marketplace, or you can trade it on a Telegram group or whatever exchange you might want to trade it on. And we think this is an incredible iteration on secondary markets in massively multiplayer online games, which have been around since the early 2000s, really.
Mm-hmm. So another part that we want to address is to make a lot of these things bearer assets again. So I mean, Bitcoin is making money a bearer asset. So you can hold your own funds if you remember 12 words and you create a wallet. Traditionally in games, all the game currency that you make, let's say in World of Warcraft, it's not yours. You don't hold it. It's held on a server. If you lose your account, you lose your World of Warcraft gold and possibly everything else. So we're trying to remove that from the equation and fix a problem for gamers. The other part is, I guess, when you're trying to collaborate in a guild and you have a guild bank, there are stories of people looting these guild banks by infiltrating the guild, because what you're doing is sharing a password for an account. So if we can make the game currency into a crypto asset on Liquid, then you can avoid that, because you can use multi-sig tech and all the Bitcoin technology that's been built up around the ecosystem. It can be repurposed to fit the needs of gamers. And it's just to be clear, like, Infinite Fleet, the INF game currency, we always call it a game currency, is not a competitor to, say, Bitcoin or any money. It is a game currency, but it's an upgraded game currency that gives players some of these benefits of bearer characteristics. So a lot of blockchain games and GameFi projects and even the greater crypto ecosystem, they're trying to compete with Bitcoin and money and say, it's a better Bitcoin or a better money. We're very transparent and clear. This is a game currency. If you're into Bitcoin, that's good. It doesn't compete, and it has nothing to do with that. It's a game currency, and its benefits are going to be for gamers that play the game. So I think that's a key difference here in how we've structured and how we communicate this whole thing.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you. So, yeah, you've talked about some of the characteristics of Infinite Fleet, right? So could you tell us what actually is the goal of Infinite Fleet? How do you play it? And are you trying to onboard non-crypto natives onto, a Web3 gaming project?
Well, I think this is another key difference. We don't bill it as Web3. You can call it Web3 if you want, but for us, it's a game first and foremost. And all of the tech aspects pertaining to blockchain and sidechains is really an augmentative feature to the game. It's not changing the game. It's not using a blockchain per se. It's just using some technology that I think can enhance the user experience. So there's that part. But I think the goal is that we do want to use this to influence people and have them understand Bitcoin and understand money. So as a Bitcoin maximalist, I'm Bitcoin only. I don't have a lot of interest in the crypto ecosystem or anything like that. But I want to use the game, the story, and all those things to educate people on why money is important and why Bitcoin is important through the telling of the sci-fi story, and also just the game itself and how it works. Because you can teach people to use a bearer asset, right? When you actually download the game and run the launcher, you create a wallet, which is a Liquid wallet. So you actually go through the steps of doing a lot of things that you will do for Bitcoin. So I guess in the story part, we're using a lot of how do you say that? It's like anecdotes or nods to Bitcoin culture. So in the game itself, the different nations are called citadels. So that's a nod to the citadels of Bitcoin, right? And in the game itself, INF is the Bitcoin of that universe. So INF stands for Interplanetary Networked Finance Currency. So as people understand INF in the lore of the game, they're going to kind of learn about Bitcoin and how it works. But we're not putting it in their face. It's more of an optional thing in terms of exposure. They're not going to be clubbed on the head and say, learn about Bitcoin. But they'll learn because it's part of the story and history, and it's woven into the chronicles, which is the story of the game. But yeah, the players are going to be exposed to this concept and a lot of these ideas around Bitcoin and why it's important and how it fixes things. A lot of sci-fi games, they gloss over the economic aspects of their fictional world, right? If you look at Star Trek, it's everything is a utopian, but then you still have people that seem to have commerce, right? Like certain races, like the Ferengi, are very commerce driven, but then somehow with the Federation, it's there's no money. But how do those different parts interact? Because obviously they need to trade, and I think a lot of stuff in sci-fi universes is automated with tech, with drones and replication and fabrication. But then I think somebody has to still service those things too. So a lot of pieces of the sci-fi tapestry are kind of missing. And I hope to fill that and have a better economic story behind the sci-fi story that makes it more plausible in the minds of the players. So Chris, do you want to go into a bit about the game mechanics and how it actually works?
Yeah, well, one thing I really, because she was opening up saying about the about average gamers, and I think you made some really good points, and it really is what differentiates us, that our target is average gamers. And right now in the gaming space, NFTs aren't really they're not so hot right now. But for us, you see, you don't actually need to know anything about NFTs, about Bitcoin, about crypto, about anything at all to play Infinite Fleet to 100% capacity. It is an additional feature to use the peer-to-peer trading. So what's core to that is really the UX. So for us, we hide all the blockchain from view. You don't need to download MetaMask. You don't need to then trade something on an exchange and then put it into a phantom wallet and then put it into that wallet and change it into the game currency and whatever else. Massive hassle for average gamers who they just don't care. They don't see the benefit, right? So we hit all that. Basically, you have a non-custodial wallets that you open when you when you register your account, very, very simply, and you just earn INF as you play in these events and things. And you might start to say, well, what does INF do? You say, okay, well, you can go onto our peer-to-peer marketplace and you can trade and do, it's there, it's in the game, you'll be able to trade things. And then you go onto the Reddit forums or you meet the hardcore players who say, hey, you know what, actually, there's more marketplace over here or there. And then that's where you kind of go into this rabbit hole. But the point is the entire game, it's a standard well, not standard's a bad word, but I mean, it's a normal MMO game. It's a space game that you can play like EVE Online, like Elite Dangerous, like No Man's Sky, and play it 100%.
Yeah, and all gamers are familiar with the idea of virtual currencies and those types of games, right? That are not portable. They're portable to some extent, but heavily dependent on the game operator, right? But they understand how it works. That's why there are secondary markets for most MMO games. So they're already familiar with this concept of trading items, basically exchanging time for money and money for time, right? If they invest hours and make some item or level up some character or a ship, they understand that there's another player that will take it from them in exchange for something else. So I think it's a way to kind of orange pill a lot of people and get them understanding everything without necessarily making it overly complex at the start, because they're already familiar with all these systems.
Amazing, thank you. So actually, I have to admit myself, I'm not a huge gamer. I mean, my gaming experience expands to, I don't know, RuneScape years ago. And yeah, and so yeah, I remember they did have, I think it was called the Grand Exchange, and then yeah, so it would be, an in-game kind of marketplace, right? So does Infinite Fleet have an in-game marketplace, or is everything just based on secondary markets?
It will have. Yeah, sure, it will have. So basically, We are building it's not out yet, but we are building a peer-to-peer marketplace that players can access, just like the Grand Exchange. So you know exactly how it works. You chuck your lobbies on there, or your blue party hat, which is worth $5,000 now, I think. The blue party hat's worth. Anyway, mad. But yeah, these things have been around since, because I was on RuneScape when I was at university, right? So that's like 13 years ago. So it's certainly nothing new. But it is that iteration with the NFT and INF side, which allows for the trustless side. Now, in terms of the other platforms, yes, of course, you can do that. This is where Samson was talking about that bearer asset, or being able to I suppose, have ownership and take it where you want to take it. Build your own marketplace if you wanted to. We're totally fine with that. We just offer the service. We believe in free markets. We believe in freedom with digital in-game items, because they're your goods. That's you know, you should have that, and you should be able to trade them. And like I say, you know, we just want to open that door for players to be able to trade openly.
I think the original design we had was basically the marketplace that is actually crypto. So like we mentioned before, we're hiding all the complexity. So you don't need to buy liquid Bitcoin, which pays the transaction fees in liquid. You just pay with normal money. And it's like, you know, a few cents or something like that, 20 cents or whatever. But all of this will be hidden from the user. But the original plan was to just have the NFT spaceships, and then INF will be the game currency. But I think we're looking at new tech right now. There's new opportunities on the market. One of the interesting things for me is pair credit, which is being built by Hole Punch. So this is blockchain-less tech. So it's sort of like Lightning for digital assets with an issuer. That's why it's called credit, because it's designed mainly for things like, you know, stable coins or other digital assets that have an issuer. But there is an application here too for, say, games. So you can have that same kind of verifiable mathematical proof on these digital assets, but without the need to have a blockchain and for transaction fees, because it's peer-to-peer. So right now we're starting early R&D into integration of Hole Punch and pair credit into the game, whereby every digital item technically could be on this marketplace. So we don't need to constrain it just to the ships, because if there is a blockchain, you have to have a fee, otherwise you risk denial of service attacks. So that would limit the utility for us as the game developer and operator to add that, because you don't want to add friction to every single transaction where every trade will cost you an on-chain fee. But with something like this, sort of a layer 2 for digital assets, there is no cost to it. So potentially this could change the architecture we have now, where instead of just one thing, it's you know, every item, a cog or a piece of iron ore could also be done the same, traded in the same mechanism and in the same bearer capacity.
Awesome, thank you. This is actually the first time I've heard of a game that doesn't do, you know, token sales and stuff like that. So how are you ensuring that Infinite Fleet has a sustainable ecosystem?
I think the answer is that because we're not doing some ICO token sale, we will have a sustainable ecosystem. I mean, Axie Infinity is kind of dying now because their entire premise was that you have to keep pumping the token because they're selling the token. And same for other games too. There's another game out there that is in the same genre as us called Star Atlas, and they did an ICO on FTX where you had to buy FTT token and stake it to get some other token. And this is a complex mechanism, but the gatekeeping factor is you have to, you know, buy someone's token to get some other token and buy some other token. It's like a very complicated model, but I don't think any of these things can sustain. And also, if your game is just making NFTs for the sake of having an NFT, like if that is the selling point, you're also going to have a problem too, because in a market like this, people are not going to throw money away at something that is worthless. So you have to have the fundamentals in place, which is a solid game and a solid player base that wants to play the game, and they're not speculating on that asset.
Yeah, if I can add, we've never ever said that we're a play to earn game. And I think that's something that really puts us apart from other games. I mean, you talked about RuneScape before. There are a couple of things in RuneScape that are quite valuable. The blue party hat, for example, because that was some party event they had years ago or whatever, and it's prestigious to have that. Sure, but for us, we don't expect players are going to make money from Infinite Fleet. That's not the point. The point is that you have open trade, sure, of digital items that you may find valuable or not. That's absolutely okay. But as Samson said, we didn't do an ICO. We're not selling our INF token or anything like that. And in order to have a sustainable ecosystem, people just need to enjoy a good game. That's why the Blue Party hat matters. It's because people like RuneScape. So that's what we're doing.
Amazing. Very well said. Right. So drawing on your experience, Samson, can you tell us what mistakes people make when trying to create a game of this caliber, and how can you avoid these mistakes?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a mistake. I think it's a knowingly done tactic, which is trying to use the technology as a crutch. So either you're branding it as GameFi, or you're branding it as play to earn, and you're branding it as an NFT game, or you're saying you're built on a blockchain. But none of that really matters. You have to have a good game at the core, and you have to focus on gameplay. Like, this is not a focus for most of the games that are, I guess, considered to be part of that quadrant of, GameFi and play to earn. And I think that's the biggest failing. They're not getting the right people. They're not trying to build a game. They're trying to make something where investors and speculators can 10x their investment in a few months. But that is definitely not sustainable. And that's really just dumping on retail market and uneducated people that don't know better, right? They're just buying in on a buzzword. So I think that's the biggest pitfall. You have to actually build a game. If your game can't function without the blockchain / crypto part, then it's probably not going to work in the long run, because no one's playing your game just to earn the token. Even if that is the mechanism, and it is play to earn, you need players still so that someone can earn something, right? And play to earn basically is farming, with a new catchy phrase on it, right? And this has existed since the dawn of all games. Like, people have been farming anytime they can farm. So again, that's not new either. So like Axie Infinity before loved to brag about play to earn. But if you break down what play to earn is, you're paying people in developing countries, the third world nations, to farm for you. And that's not something that you should really brag about, right? So I don't know why they thought it was a good idea. I think they've since pivoted and moved away from that messaging. But yeah, these I think are pretty big pitfalls. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I don't have a heck of a lot to add to that. I think you hit the nail on the head. In my opinion, it's not a mistake. It's not a mistake for them in a sense. I think they are actively, essentially, trying to scam as many people as possible in a short amount of time. That's why these things look like Facebook games from 2002. I mean, it's just get a game out, get that tokenomics sheet out, get some investors, rug pull, run away. You know what I mean? And that's what the industry is. I think there's very few, if any, blockchain games out there that really expect to be sustainable.
Awesome. Do you know, I've never heard anyone lay Axie Infinity out like like that.
Really? Absolutely.
Not so publicly anyway.
Okay.
But yeah. Actually, Samson, you said they're trying to pivot away from that. Do you see Axie Infinity coming back?
Not really, because the game is not fun. It's just a grind. So I can't really see, like, they've done their whole gone through the whole cycle. So if you look at most altcoins, they come out and then they peak and then they drop, and maybe there's a second small pump and then they just die off. They've kind of done that already. So if they follow the trajectory of most of these projects, they're already finished, right? And they'll make another one and they'll probably have another pump for another token, but that's not really interesting. Like, it's basically a scam.
I think they've been starting work on a game that has no token at all on it. It's just like an average game that I think they're pivoting on. So maybe they took a whole bunch of money from Axie and they've moved on to something else now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys launched earlier last year, right? So what has been the reception of the game so far?
You mind if I take that, Samson? I think it's mostly been very, very positive, really, because, our goal, I think, as I said, is to go for the average gamer. Now, of course, we have a lot of people who are interested in crypto in our community. That's a given. But actually, the people who are most active on our Discord are people that are gamers, traditional, typical gamers. Now, we haven't exploded our marketing out yet right now. We've just been kind of hunkering down and focusing on development. We're very close to the point where Infinite Fleet, we're going to really smash it out there and do a blast, which is, 2023 is going to be a big year for us for sure, on that front in terms of just making, developing the game, because it is early access. It's a live operations game. So we're constantly building and iterating upon it with new features and things. But we have thousands of players who are really enjoying the game. So far it's been pretty great. Samson, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think basically I don't have that much more to add to it. Like, we are in closed beta now, so we're still limiting the number of players that can come in, just because we don't want to be overloaded with support requests and everything like that. But we do have an invite system, so we're seeing a trickle of users come in as people invite their friends. They get, I think, 1 invite a week. Is that right, Chris? Or 1 a month? They can invite some.
They can invite some. There's a bit more than that, but they can invite quite a few. But yeah.
So basically, we're trying to keep it very small for now, as we're still in development. It's almost early access stage, if you will. It's a closed beta, but we're trying to finish more features, more functionality before we really go wide. But yeah, I would say the reception is really good, and there's a lot of really dedicated players that have been with us since alpha. So they've stuck around, because I think the game itself is an interesting niche of the market that has not yet been served. It's effectively an MMORTS. So if you played something like StarCraft, you're base building and fighting, but except for in Infinite Fleet is all persistent. So you can build structures, base stations around the world. And I would say they're definitely not here for the crypto part, because we haven't actually minted the NFTs for the spaceships yet. I think they might have been minted. The game currency is minted, but we haven't distributed. So like no one's here because of the NFTs. We sold a lot of ships last year during alpha, because that was the way to get into alpha, but they're not actually NFTs. They know that they're going to be eventually, but they're buying the ships and everything because they want to play the game, and that should be the overriding reason that they're here.
Interestingly, actually, when we first started selling ships to get into the alpha, we didn't even announce that they were going to be NFTs at all, and we still sold we still sold hundreds of them. People were just interested in playing the game, the average gamers. So I think our goal is coming to light, and hopefully what the next stage really is that thing of Samson saying of kind of orange pilling the average gamer and getting them kind of interested in these other worlds.
Yeah, a lot of these games, they just have so many hurdles. Like, you're catering to a very small market, people that have crypto, right? Like, if your barrier to invest in the Star Atlas ICO was having FTT token, you're basically helping the exchange sell their token, right? Like, you have to get someone in the crypto space to go and buy FTT on FTX before you can buy your token. You're basically a marketing arm for that company there, right? But then you're also catering to a very small audience, which is crypto people that know or have an account on FTX. And I think, first of all, that's dumb. And second, ICOs are not a great idea. But like, third, you're catering to you're basically preaching to the choir. You're catering to people that already have some sort of interest or understanding or exposure, whereas the broader audience, the potential to reach with games is in the billions of users. So you have to take a step back and look at, what do you actually want to accomplish? Do you want to just cannibalize that small pie over and over and basically rip them off? Or do you want to, go and make a real game and reach real people around the world and teach them a little bit about Bitcoin? I think for us, the answer is obvious. We're trying to do the latter.
So, Chris, what are your next steps at Pixelmatic?
Well, obviously, building Infinite Fleet, it is a long-term game, something that we intend to be alive for decades to come, as RuneScape or any of these other MMOs. But also, we also have a publisher called Exordium Limited. And so with Exordium, we're actually building kind of a platform, a publishing platform, which will onboard various different games that share a kind of similar ethos to us. So our real intention long term is to have something a little bit like the Epic Store or Steam or something like that, which can have INF as its native token. So not only will Infinite Fleet use it, but a whole bunch of other games in the future as well. So that's really the long-term view. Obviously, right now, Infinite Fleet is our main product and main game that we're building and wanting to make it great, of course. But that is the next step after that, the next vision. And then, of course, taking the various technology that we build with Infinite Fleet to make some even more cool games as well, like, fantasy games or pirate games or whatever it might, or shooters, that kind of thing. But yeah, one step at a time, I suppose. Infinite Fleet first.
For Infinite Fleet, the next updates are going to be additional abilities and probably some UI UX improvements. And then after that, we are probably going to hunker down for probably 2 months, maybe 3. And we have a big feature coming out, which is what we promised people originally, which is procedural generation, or ProGen for short. So we're going to start generation of the entire galaxy procedurally. So you'll have a lot more stuff to explore once that next update rolls out.
Awesome. I don't even know what ProGen means.
It means that we can use maths essentially to build a galaxy of billions of stars that players can go and explore and make their mark on in the galaxy and build space stations and all that kind of thing.
Right. Awesome. And then how does that actually compare to what you guys have now?
Well, right now we have it. Sorry, go ahead, Samson.
Oh, go ahead. It's manual right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have a whole bunch of really interesting locations right now that have been obviously handcrafted by our designers and things. But there's only when with a team of designers, before you get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of designers, you can't build that many stars. For us, we're going to use procedural generation, these algorithms, this maths, to create a universe essentially, which is essentially limitless.
Oh, right. Okay. That's amazing. How exciting. Thank you so much for watching this episode. And if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to give us a like, comment, and subscribe. So thanks, Samson. Thanks, Chris, for taking the time out to talk to me. And I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.